Hi, I'm Adrian O'Sullivan. Welcome to episode 2 of the Coaching Playbook with Shane Hasset. This week's guest, Shane, is currently the coach of the Clare and Toomevara senior hurlers. Shane's story is very, very interesting in that he didn't have a high-level inter-county career and started his coaching career from the grassroots up. So for any coaches kind of unsure about their pathway into elite coaching, it's a really, really interesting listen. And because Shane is an inter-county and a club coach, he gives some excellent nuggets on high performance and how to apply that at club level if you don't have the resources of an inter-county team. Before we start, we'd like to say a big thank you to the Irish Strength and Conditioning Network for sponsoring the series. These things simply can't happen without sponsors, and we're very grateful to them. The Irish S&C Network is a diverse coaching network that includes members from a wide range of fields, from S&C coaches, sports scientists and physiotherapists, to students, hobbyists, and anyone with an interest in coaching, really, at all levels, from grassroots right up to elite performance. As a listener of the Coaching Playbook, the Irish S&C Network are offering you a 30-day free trial. Simply use the code ISCNPLAY at checkout on irishsncnetwork.com to access all the fantastic resources and information that they have on the site. So thanks for listening. Like, subscribe, and enjoy the episode with Shane. So today's guest is a guy who probably flies under the radar a little bit on the inter-county coaching scene. But at a young age, he has a CV that is the envy of many, including myself, I have to say. A Fitzgibbon Cup winner already with UL and current coach of the Clare and Toomevara senior hurlers. Shane Hasset, you're very welcome to the Hurling Playbook. How are you?
Not too bad, Adrian. Thanks for having me on.
Not at all. Shane, we'll crack on straight into it. I suppose it might be fair to say that you break the mold a little bit. I suppose a young coach, no inter-county senior hurling experience, but already a vast amount of experience behind you at the highest levels of the game, coaching. Tell me a little bit about your coaching journey, how it started, and I suppose how it started so early for you.
Yeah, I suppose breaking the mold is one way of putting it. There's a huge element of luck involved along the way, but I suppose I did put in the hard yards as well. You know, when you're in transition year, I suppose you get into the cool camp coaching and that, and you work your way up from there. But went into college in UL, done sports science, and didn't get involved in any coaching in first year there. But from second year onwards, I would have played hurling in first year, and say with the fresher hurling team, I was captain of the fresher team in first year, and then Gary Kirby was the manager of the team. And in the second year, he asked me to get involved with the freshers, say, as a second year. So straight away, I was getting involved with guys pretty much my own age or maybe a year younger, and doing things like taking warm-ups, and that kind of thing, just a little bit of organising, but getting involved in team setups, standing in the freezing cold below. And I remember Tralee with a camera video on a game and all that kind of a thing. And that kind of just went on from, I think I ended up spending 7 years in UL throughout my own undergraduate degree and masters, and another year after that again, all while I was playing as well. So I stayed with the fresher team while I was playing up to Fitzgibbon level, and then once I kind of finished playing in UL, I went from, say, Gary obviously became the Fitzgibbon manager, and then I obviously went up with him, and I went from there. And then that was, I suppose, COVID actually came in then. I was due to actually take up a management role in UL, and then COVID came in. And as COVID then came in, I found myself not doing a lot apart from my own full-time job at the time, which I was lucky enough to be able to work during COVID. But then kind of randomly out of the blue, I got called by Brian and into the Clare setup, and kind of all spiraled from going in there, which I'm sure we'll go into more detail.
Yeah, that's what the college environment is a fantastic place to start coaching. I was only chatting to someone about this the other day. There's so many teams, and while it is high profile at certain times, it is a kind of a safe space to cut your teeth a little bit as well, isn't it? And that it's not quite the cut and trust of senior intercounty or even like top level club. You can kind of make your mistakes off the radar a little bit. And I suppose what I would have found with college coaching, I'll pop this question out, but it's the network of people I built up from just being around UL and the different teams and stuff like that I found to be a great help to me over the years.
Yeah, definitely. And I suppose from playing, obviously you meet an awful lot of people, and still to this day you meet a lot of lads, and a lot of them obviously playing for other inter-county teams. But it's great to obviously, even go over to them after a game, just shake their hand, and whoever wins, it's nice to be able to meet those fellas. But also from the coaching point of view, I'm still meeting coaches that I was involved with or would also have been involved with other teams in UL, like yourself, say, like the likes of DJ Collins and loads more. There's so many coaches that went through UL there, but to be able to meet them every now and again, and it's a great network to have, and you're never like that. You're never in awe of meeting any of these maybe bigger names that you might have seen. There were bigger names back then, but it's just because it really is. I'm not sure what other colleges are like, but UL certainly is like a club, and to this day I still support that club. So
that kind of leads me on to the next question, Shane, is that you are the same age as a lot of the Clare lads. So can you tell me about the first time you stood up in front of them, I suppose, having no inter-county playing experience? How are you feeling? And like, did you have to work hard to get their respect, or how did it kind of roll out for you?
Yeah, I suppose again when I went in originally as an S&C into the group. I suppose S&C/sports scientist. I had my masters in sports performance done, so I knew I had the knowledge, and I wasn't really overawed. I was quite confident in the gym side of things. I had trained, say, up as far as county under-21 level at football, actually, but also played at Fitzgibbon level in hurling. So I knew the standards of athleticism that you're dealing with there. So I wasn't really overawed by any of them. And obviously I knew quite a lot of them because a lot of them lads would have went to UL. And then, so my first real job there was taking gym sessions. And that was a really nice way of meeting the lads, because you're giving them your new ideas that they mightn't have seen before, different movements maybe, or different, I suppose, approaches to the gym, let's say. So they're like most inter-county players, they're like sponges. They love information, they love new ideas, they love taking all these different concepts on. So no, it wasn't tough at all from that point of view. And then just as the year went on, the first year went on, gradually just got more comfortable, and then started taking the likes of warm-ups. And for me, like when it comes to S&C, strength and conditioning for me a lot is to do with the actual game. So so I started taking a lot of different games and things like that to improve conditioning. And that's where I tied in then with the hurling coach that was there, Sean Tracy, brilliant hurling coach and brilliant former player for Galway. And I learned a lot from him, and quickly the two of us dovetailed really easily. He knew what I was trying to achieve and I knew what he was trying to achieve, and we were actually able to work really well together. And by the end of the first year, I felt really comfortable with the lads, and they were very comfortable with me. And I suppose one of my big things is I'm able to articulate a point pretty well. I previously I might have got flustered up, but every day I'm learning and I'm getting better at getting my points across. And the players like that level of information or the detail that you might go into, and it's all about how you get it across to the players. So to go back to your question, no, I never felt overawed or anything like that. Felt I just transitioned, I suppose, really well from being just the S&C then into taking some of the hurling and obviously the sports science side of it. And into year two then, Brian asked me to get more involved in the hurling decisions, let's say. So it became a bit of both. That year was difficult because I was trying to juggle the S&C and the hurling and the data analysis, if you want to call it that, from load monitoring and GPS and all that. And into then the year gone by, my third year there, where I progressed fully on to just hurling coaching, and we got in then an S&C to do that side of things.
Yeah, no, it's very interesting. I suppose the thing that's running through my head is, I suppose it's often spoken about that transitioning from Fitzgibbon to intercounty as a player is a kind of a natural stepping stone, that it's a good breeding ground for intercounty players to see what they're made of. It's such a high standard. I suppose you benefited very much from being involved at that level as a coach, and you seem not to have had any real doubts or, I suppose, lack of confidence kind of making the step across. So I suppose my next question would be, like, aspiring coaches who are maybe doubting that they have what it takes, would you recommend that they should try and get involved at a college level and use that as a stepping stone into intercounty?
Yeah, I think that's probably the natural progression. If you're young and you want to get into coaching, I suppose I still want to play, and to this day I'm still trying to play, but kind of quickly realised that you're not going to make it maybe at the top level. But so starting with college is a good idea, yeah. But also, now I quickly kind of learned I prefer working with more mature athletes, so kind of from minor upwards. It's not that I have never done anything with underage or anything like that, but I suppose that's not my expertise right now. After my few years of experience between UL and Clare, I'm actually much happier maybe working with older athletes. So But obviously get stuck into the likes of the cool camps. If you're back in TY 50 or 60 year looking for a summer job, that's a great introduction. Then if you go to college, then get stuck into your GA club maybe in the college, or help out with your minor team at home, or your under 15s or 16s at home. There's loads of opportunity there. You just have to go and look for it. And that's the one thing I'll say is, I was actually asked by Gary Kirby to get involved with the freshers when I was in second year, I might never have done it, and mightn't even be in this profession now. Like a lot of sports science students end up leaving it when they finish college. So there is that element of luck as well. And the same when it came to the getting involved with Clare, it was a bit of luck really. That I had worked with Brian before as a player, and kind of he would have known me from the UL scene as well. So just a bit of luck there too. And like that's networking for you. So he kind of knew who I was, and he knew a bit about me. So just getting to know different people, and the college is great for that, because as you said, there's so many different types of coaches, obviously different teams, different standards of teams as well, and obviously the 4 different codes between hurling, football, camogie and ladies football.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say luck there, and I think maybe people who don't realise how much luck is involved at different stages. Like I can point to 3 or 4 different times in my career where I've got a break that someone took a chance on me that maybe I didn't deserve, based on my experience, and that I definitely wouldn't be where I am now coaching only for it. But funnily enough, I don't know if I become cynical. Maybe I sat down for a coffee with a guy there about a month ago that was looking for me to get involved with a county team next year, and he asked me what my goal was in coaching, and I started laughing. And I was like, look, I've been in this game too long to make long-term goals anymore, because there's so much luck involved at elite sports. You could be a bounce of a ball away from being the best in the world or the worst in the world. It's like, I think what you said there, Shane, is bang on. Like networking, I think take the job that you have currently, do it to the best of your ability. And if you're a genuine person and you do the job to the best of your ability, the people you've worked with will give you more opportunities down the line, and people will see you for what you are, I think. So he wasn't too happy that I didn't have a big aspiration to go and do X, Y, and Z. He thought I was cynical, maybe saying I was only focusing on what was in front of my eyes. But I think, would you agree with that? Just work hard at the job you have, and if you're a good, genuine guy with a good work ethic, that you get more opportunities along the way.
Definitely. Like I suppose I'm always a big believer in what's for you won't pass you. In everything. I kind of live day to day really. That's just something I suppose an attribute I gained over the years is just to take every day as it comes. If you even think of the Munster Championship this year, I don't know how many teams were a puck of a ball away from either being knocked out or going through. And at the elite level, that's what it can be. The same, same in soccer, same in rugby. And obviously, like I'm sure other counties are the same. I'm currently watching a lot of games in Tipperary Club Championship, a lot of games up in the Clare Club Championship. I've watched a few streams here in Limerick as well. And it's like at club level now, it's so cutthroat. So you can't be setting out, these massive goals for yourself. Number one, as a coach, you just have to work with what you have at the minute. Take the team that you have, work really well, and then the other thing I really believe in is word of mouth. I'm not a big believer. I'm not very present on social media or anything like that. Even though sometimes you might feel like you try to have to put up something to stay relevant, but I don't like it. I've all notifications for Instagram, Twitter, that kind of thing just turned off. I'll see them when I go onto it. But if you're good at your job and you're doing it well, word of mouth will travel. And that's basically for me. Or if there's any young coach listening to this, that's really, really important. But that has to start somewhere, So whatever you get into, be it your under 10s at home or be it the fresher college team, give it everything you can, without putting yourself out of, putting yourself out in terms of college work or things like that. And that's easy for me to say that now, but my grades slipped a nice bit in my second year because I put so much time into going to matches and missing classes, but they didn't slip that much. But at the same time, as I said, the actual experience has probably stood to me more now than the grades.
Yeah, I'd say I've had a couple of employers over the years that would have said that my work ethic was very much down between February and August a lot of the time, but we won't go there, I suppose. Shane, you mentioned club there, watching a lot of club games at the moment. Obviously, you're coaching Toomevara and Tipperary as well, and you're motoring away okay. A lot of our listeners will be club coaches. As I said, you coach at both levels, county and club. do you approach club differently to county? And if yes, in what way?
No, I don't. In terms of my coaching, I don't. So I want to give, or I try to give the club players the closest to an inter-county experience that they'll get. So for example, like Toomevara at the minute, there's nobody in the panel that's on the county senior panel, let's say. There was one guy in the 20s this year. So a lot of those guys, now someone would have played with county panels in the past, but a lot of those guys aren't used to maybe having the county level experience. So I just try to bring 2 or 3 things that we might use in an inter-county setup back to the club. And obviously the way I coach then, be it with games, or be it with specific games, or be it with drills, or be it with the gym side of things, I'll try and give them what I can give, what I am giving, I suppose, to Clare. And I think they appreciate that. They like to see as close to a professional setup as possible. Like, they like to see organisation, and that's not just from me, that's from the management, obviously, as well, the manager, the coaches, the selectors, everyone that's involved. Having a kind of kit men or kit people there, and they really appreciate the effort that goes in then. Because I know myself from playing club hurling for probably the last, maybe last 12 years, 13 years, I suppose, you see an awful lot of different coaches. And you can spot the ones straight away that, don't have their I suppose, their stuff together. They're not as well prepared maybe as they should be, or and obviously the ones that are, then they stand out a mile, and they're the ones that you learn an awful lot from. So no, I don't really approach it any differently. Now obviously that goes with the resources as well. You're not going to have the same resources that you have at the inter-county level. Be that, say, for example, let's say a GPS system. Now, thankfully, I do have that access with Toomevara, and that's really helpful. And I'll go into that in further detail maybe later on. But the likes of that, or the likes of maybe a video analysis software, or an actual stats team that are working on a software like, whatever software companies are out there that we all know, the ones that we all use. So yeah, you mightn't have those resources, or you mightn't have the exact resources that you have at inter-county level, but at the same time, that's not going to stop me from going, pulling my own clips out of a game, doing my own analysis on a team that we might be playing, or a team that we've played in the past, or anything like that. So they're the kind of the smaller things that I might be bringing to the table at club level.
Yeah, you'll find you tend not to lower your standards to the resources available. You tend to get more resourceful and find a way to get it done. But I think you'll go further as a coach that's incredibly well organized. I think, or you get more out of a team if you're incredibly well organized and professional, and maybe don't have as much hurling knowledge than you will if you have all the hurling knowledge in the world and you're all over the place. I think guys like structure and discipline and organization and things like that. I think it's very important. If you can add the hurling knowledge on top of that, then I suppose you're halfway there. Obviously, you mentioned there, Shane, we met in UL, so we obviously know each other outside of doing this, and that's why I invited you on. I remember you telling me in the past that one of your pet hates from your experience on the club scene is managers putting massive emphasis on the wrong things. Right? So could you expand a little bit on that for me, and maybe give any club coaches listening here the benefit of your experience?
That kind of comes from, it's actually one of the downfalls of studying sports science, because you get so critical and so analytic about the actual science of, let's say, recovery methods, load monitoring, gym programs, that kind of thing, that if what's being given to you then at club level, and you're just going in there as the player, is not what you think is right, it can really frustrate you, really frustrate you. And that actually, hand up, I will say that actually held me back as a player, because I then didn't buy into what the management were trying to do. And certainly held me back as a player, having studied sports science. So a couple of things, I suppose, that, and this is just, and I always want to try and educate, if I go into a team and the manager is there, or they might have another coach, or they might have a couple of selectors, you want to try and educate them that, right, we can improve what you're doing here a little bit. So I'm not going to say the next couple of things, I'm not going to say this is the right or the wrong thing to do, but there probably are better ways of doing it. So the first one I'm going to touch on there would be, let's say, recovery. So there's a huge emphasis on recovery from, say, the club side of things, which is very important. But a lot of the first thing that'll be thrown out there is, get into the ice bath, get into the river down the road, get into the sea, get the recovery boots on, cryotherapy chambers, there's various contrast therapies. There's various different forms of it now, and it's great to actually see there's loads of these different recovery room kind of types of situations popping up all over the place, and they're brilliant. But they're literally 1%ers in my own opinion, and a lot of them have a very small amount of research to back them up. Some of them is kind of unproven yet. So, for example, like the cryotherapy, the ice baths, not really proven yet, or not. They're kind of a little bit uncertain, but it has been shown to actually blunt adaptation to training. Now, that's actually more shown in a gym setting. But so again, a lot more research has to be done on the likes of those. Whereas if players could nail an adequate amount of sleep, and I'm a big believer in sleep, because I'd be terrible if I don't get 8 hours a night. And I still get up at 6 o'clock in the morning. So that'll tell you what time I'm in bed at. Sleep, number one. Hydration, obviously, and food. So no particular order, but those three. So if you can nail proper sleep, proper then hydration, like the amount of guys I'd see, and they're not drinking water during the week. They might start drinking water on the Thursday for a match on a Saturday or a match on a Sunday. But realistically, that's not going to be enough. Like, you need to be drinking your couple of litres every day, realistically. And obviously eating good quality food. And I suppose the elephant in the room a lot of the time is like, you might have a match last weekend, and then you have a match this weekend. And then some guys, again, and I've done this in the past myself, and they'll go and they'll drink a load of pints, and then they're full blowout on the Saturday night after the match or Sunday night after the match. And then they're expecting that their dead leg is going to cure in a week's time. So I don't know, I can't remember who quoted it a couple of weeks ago. Some inter-county footballer maybe, but they were saying that they just avoided going out on a certain night after they got a dead leg in a game, because they knew it'll blunt the recovery and it'll take longer for that dead leg to heal. Like, so if players could actually, or if even the managers and the coaches could put more focus on, right, lads, get your sleep, your food and your hydration right first. Then if you have, obviously, number one, the money, and number two, the resources to go and take the ice baths or the recovery rooms or anything like that, by all means, go and try that. But I think a lot of the emphasis there is goes into the smaller 1%ers as opposed to the big three, as I call them. So that's the first piece of advice I give there. The second one then is when it comes to S&C in the gym. So the strength side of it. So I've seen all sides of it, but I suppose one example, these are just scenarios I've seen. So 1 year you might go out to championship, let's say quarter-final time, semi-final time, and there'll be a review, and they'll say, right, the first thing, right, we weren't strong enough, we weren't fit enough. That's obviously the first thing that gets thrown out, right? So next year,
coach.
Yes, well, they might have had an S&C coach. So the next year, right, we'll get in an S&C coach, and we'll do more gym, and we'll religiously do the gym. So then the S&C coach will come in, and he could do a really bad gym program, and he might only do it for 6 weeks, which we've all seen, and that goes out the window after 6 weeks. Or else he's there every night, and it's actually structured S&C, and it goes on the whole year through, and there's nice progression from a kind of a strength block onto a power block and whatnot, and they're doing all the right things. But at the same time, then guys are picking up injuries. So then the management is wondering, right, well, how are all these lads getting injured? We're doing all the S&C. We're trying to do everything right, but yet we have 4 or 5 guys out with soft tissue injuries. So there's more to it than just doing the gym or not doing the gym. And I'll actually put my hand up and say here, from a club side, I let the guys off to do their own gym, so I put it up on the app, and it's up to them to do it. I know hand in heart a lot of them aren't doing it, and that's the nature of club as well. And they just haven't got the buy-in, because it's year one that I'm with them, so they haven't bought into it fully yet on the gym side of it. But yet we've very few injuries, so very few soft tissue injuries. We've had a couple, and that's the nature of sport. So I suppose this is where load monitoring comes into it. So a lot of coaches or managers that might be listening to this might know what load monitoring is. So load monitoring is basically managing the amount of times that the guys are training, for how long, the intensities of the session, the distances they're covering, and basically kind of what the GPS is giving you in one sense. That's a certain metric. There are a number of different metrics you can collect. You can collect RPE as well. They're kind of the two easy ones. Would be the RPE. Obviously doesn't cost anything. Getting a rating of exertion out of 10. You can use that, or else then obviously if you have access to GPS, which is becoming very accessible, then that's even more important again. So because you're actually able to say, right, well, this guy, he's after hitting his 90% of his max speed twice this week already, and we're going to throw him out into an open field game here tonight again. Well, it's a recipe for a hamstring injury if you're doing that. So I'm not going to turn around and say to every coach or every manager out there to go and upskill yourself in GPS or upskill yourself in load monitoring, but have an awareness of it, obviously. But maybe number two, when you are getting an S&C involved in your team, or a sports scientist involved in your team, or even a coach involved in your team, maybe ask those questions. Do you know what load monitoring is? Do you know what, I suppose, do you know how to read a GPS? Because some clubs actually haven't bought now and then they're sitting idle. I've seen that where because the guy that got them in originally used them, but then the guy 2 years later didn't use them, and they're in somebody's press somewhere in a house. So I'd ask those questions if you're a manager, especially, because it's up to the manager at the end of the day to hire, obviously, his coaching staff or his selectors. Not even to say hires, a lot of them are voluntary. But if you're getting in an S&C or a sports scientist, number one, ask them their qualifications and whatnot, and what they can and can't do. And if they're not able to work the GPS, that's fine, as long as they said that. But number two, if they are, let them do their job. Okay, so if I'm a young S&C and I've come into your club and you have a hurling coach, that's fine. So I'm just there to do the gym side of it, bit of conditioning work, and maybe keep an eye on the load with the GPS. And I'm going to tell you, Adrian is a little bit of a red flag tonight, because he's after spiking, let's say, in his volume and his high speed running compared to the last couple of weeks. Well, then he needs to be tailored. His session needs to be tailored compared to everybody else. And it's slowly going that way, but it's still light years behind where intercounty is. Light years behind.
Yeah,
and the number one,
I've seen it big time, Shane. Like different experiences over the years. Like we're very lucky last year in Dublin. We had a fantastic relationship. That kind of an axis between the S&C, the physio, and myself as the manager, head coach. And their attitude, like, it was always, if they can't train, they can't train. But what made it easier for me to swallow that as a manager, because it's hard to swallow it, and you just have to, and that's it. But anytime somebody could do some part of training, they did some part of training. So the question always was asked, what can they do, not what can they not do?
Yeah.
So like we would have read bibs players the same as the NFL, and if they had an injury that they might have gone into games but not be allowed to be tackled or stuff like that, or they might be doing their own thing. And that made it a lot easier for me as a manager then to go, well, this person here, I've been told they can train. Well, they really must not be able to train, because otherwise they'd be doing something. I think that really helped. But you're right. I think the GA is light years behind. It's like people taking risks, like crazy risks on players. And
well, I think at club level, it's a lack of knowledge. It's just they haven't been, I suppose, educated on this. But at intercounty level, you have so much, and I'm still like, I'm only getting good at this in the last year or two, because of the guys I'm working with, say the physios, the sports science, the S&C in Clare, and they're educating me as I go along as well. And you're learning as you go along. But
if you look at Dublin though, like Joe, and all the resources they have, their senior hurling team, and the dog in the street knew that Donald Burke wasn't going to be right for the game against Clare, and they threw him in, and he was gone after 8 minutes.
Yeah. So look,
so again, still, even at intercounty level, I think there's still.
So I was going to use the word ignorance, I suppose, and that does come in at club level. Definitely comes in at club level. But as a coach, if you're a coach, let's say, and you're the main coach on that team, you mightn't have a physio to tell you that. You mightn't have an S&C to tell you that Adrian is only able for X amount of the session. You kind of have to judge it. And when it comes on to, I know we're going to touch on coaches that have influenced me. I'll go through that. There's a guy, like, he was way ahead of his time, and he would have seen this. He would have been pulling out the older guys here and there, and the lads who were in college, he'd pull them here and there. And so you as a coach, if it's just you have that responsibility as well. If you know a player has a history of hamstrings, let's say, and in your head you can say, yeah, they've done a lot of sprinting last night, they're after doing a lot of sprinting tonight, now I should probably pull him from this game, let's say, because there's going to be a bit of sprinting in it as well, or so you have to kind of, and that's where planning your sessions comes into play as well, and we'll go through that.
Yeah, no,
so those two things, sorry Adrian, those two things, number one, the recovery strategies, stick to your big three first, and then number two, I suppose, the S&C side of it and the load monitoring side of it. listen to your S&C coach if you've hired one, or your sports scientist if you've brought one in. And number two, if you don't, maybe just go and do a little bit of reading on it. Because if you're getting muscle injuries, soft tissue injuries, you know, a lot over the year, well, then it's a load issue. Most of the time, it's actually a load issue, and probably nothing to do with what they're doing in the gym.
God, that's really interesting, Shane. I think any club coaches that are listening should be able to take those little pointers away and implement them with their team. Okay, so we've reached the part of the show now where I am going to ask you the same general questions that each guest is going to be faced with. Okay, so I am absolutely fascinated by coaching, and that there's so many different ways of reaching the same destination. So I'm really interested to see how all the different guests answer these questions and to see the similarities and differences as we go along through the episodes. So first question, Shane, you just touched on it there. Who's the person you've worked with who has most influenced your coaching style?
Well, I have my page here beside me, and I have about 15 names written down there. But because I think I've taken probably one thing from every single coach I've had, or every single maybe manager or selector, but I've also taken things from them that I don't want to see. You know, there was a number of things that I was like, right, if ever I'm a coach or a manager, do not say that, or do not approach a team like that. And I used a lot of that as well, but I've whittled it down to 3. So I'll just briefly go through.
That wasn't the question, no, but I'd allow it.
Well, I'll bring down to 3 that have influenced me a lot. I suppose we'll start number 1. My coach and my managers, I grew up from all our teams, and the lads will always nearly take the mick out of me for it, because I was always the captain and I was always the free taker, was my own father. But no, in fairness, like, we went on and we eventually won our minor county final at minor level. No, it was minor B, but he was with us the whole way up from my age group, the whole way up from under 10 up along, and he was the manager of the team. But whatever about his as you can imagine, as a Tipperary farmer, he'd be quite raw. But he actually thought outside the box, and he still does think outside the box. And a couple of years ago, I remember when teams started playing sweepers, and he couldn't understand how. Now, he wasn't involved with teams at this stage. He was just watching on as a supporter, I suppose, man in the stand. But he couldn't understand how eventually some team just didn't fully press, that it didn't push up on top of the sweeper. And lo and behold, here we are now, and a lot of teams that are kind of getting close to Limerick are pushing up man for man, and obviously that's what we've done with Clare. So his ability to think outside the box, you know, he influenced me in that degree, that I've been able to try and not just be a yes man and go with what everyone else is thinking, but to try and challenge the opinions of the management and the coach and other coaches in that. So he'd be up there. The second person, and I suppose I come from a club in Tipperary called Drum and Inch, and the home of Paddy Butler, and Paddy be kind of known as the godfather of hurling coaching down where we're from, and probably all over a lot of Ireland. Yeah. So he was the first director of hurling as well. So Paddy's a great man, but Paddy actually coached that minor team as well. So I would have had him up as far as minor, and then he got his director role. So we didn't really have much of him after that. But one thing that he done, and to this day, and I still do it with all my teams involved with, and his big expression was, how many times can a player touch the ball in the sessions? How many touches of the ball can a player get? So if we think about the way the game is going now and how coaching is going now, it's going a lot towards games-based coaching, okay? And that's brilliant, and that's what we need. But there's a lot to be said for standing 5 yards away from each other and repetitively hitting the ball to each other, and then pull it back to 10 yards, and then pull it back to 15. And I do this in every single training session. And any of the lads that might see this or listen to this that I'm coaching will know that. Just get them striking the ball. Get their touch right. Get them ball to hand right. And if we think about the Limericks of the world today, the one thing people will always say is, yes, they're athletically very strong, they're physically very strong, but just their simple hurling is so sharp. So sharp. So that for me, and Paddy Butler was a big advocate of that, was get as many touches of the ball as you can and get comfortable on the ball and get confident striking the ball and catching the ball. And he was kind of one of the main guys behind getting ball walls into a lot of clubs. So he's definitely a huge influence on how I'm coaching.
No, that's really interesting, Shane. I think myself, in my own coaching, I went completely down the games-based hole there about 7 or 8 years ago. And almost to the point of looking down my nose at anyone who wasn't nearly producing a full games-based session. But like the more I look into other sports, the more I've come back around to isolated skill and patterns of play and uncontested patterns of play and touches of ball and movement and stuff like that. So I think that's a really, really, really interesting point, actually.
Yeah, and like there's a time and place for everything. I think that you have to do a certain amount of that isolated, repetitive kind of drills, and that could be the warm up. I remember I done a session maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago there, and I remember asking the lads after the warm up, probably not 15-20 minutes gone. I just asked them, how many times do you think you've touched the ball in the warm up? And sure, it was about 200 times nearly at this stage, and then we went into our games. So repetitive work on the skills was his big thing.
Mm-hmm.
So that's Paudie's number 2, or I suppose the second there. And the last guy, and I've touched on this guy, was ahead of his time nearly, but he probably had a lot of experience under his belt when he came to us. He came into our club back in 2011, into Drummond Inch, and brought us to our first and only ever county final victory in Tipperary in 2011. Stayed with us. We lost the county final in 2012. I think he was there again in 13, and then he came back to us maybe a couple of years later again, or maybe 3 or 4 years later. But for me, he was one of the best coaches I've ever had. Sean Prendergast is his name. He's from Lismore in Waterford. Both his sons probably played with Waterford underage up along and possibly up to senior. But Sean was a primary school teacher, primary school principal. But everything he done, I've taken an awful lot from him. His ability to know how to speak to individuals and how to speak to a group, but also then his ability to know when to kind of turn up the intensity of how he speaks or tone it back down. Training teams, he used to, like before there was any load monitoring, there was no GPS, but he'd know, right, I need to pull out that guy out tonight. I need to pull him out after X amount of the session. He needs more. We could have been doing a game where it's, a high ball in, contest the high ball, breaking ball type game. And he'd spot in, right, well, there's the young lad who's maybe a little bit soft. We'll bring him down here and mark the hardest man on the team. So he had this ability to see all these different things. And they're what we call nowadays matchups, and getting used to guys matching up on different people and all that. And he's, I think the biggest thing I took from him was how he communicated. And he'd look into your eyes. You'd be in a huddle or whatever. He'd be looking straight into your eyes and speaking with such intent that you'd be fit to break down the wall after him talking to you. You would. And I suppose now when I'm trying to get my points across, or if I'm doing a speech or anything like that, I'm trying to think of, obviously I've a lot of it thought out before I even get to the session, but you want to say the right thing, but you want to say it in the right tone as well. And I learned an awful lot from him. He was a fantastic coach. So yeah, Sean Prendergast is the third of my 3 there.
Very good. I think what you described at the start there, kind of knowing when to pull back and knowing when to raise the intensity, knowing how to speak to people and stuff. I suppose I would refer to them as soft skills. I suppose I think I would have seen that as a real deficit in my own skill set. I suppose for the last few years, that's something I'm very conscious of kind of trying to be better at. It's difficult. It's not something you can just read about and implement. I think it's kind of, you just have to learn it from experience, I think, and over the years knowing individuals and knowing what motivates individuals and when to push it and when to pull back and stuff like that. I think, is that something you can only really learn with experience? Can you practice it? I'm not sure. What you think?
Well, I think I gained a lot of experience there when I finished up in college. You're applying for all sorts of jobs because sports science is such a wide range of skills, and I ended up getting a job with a newly formed kind of biomechanics company, let's call it, in Ireland, where they're analysing your gait and your body movements and all that kind of thing. But slowly that became a very successful kind of an injury type rehabilitation clinic. I was there for 4 years and I left it last year to take up this coaching kind of more on a full-time basis. But over the space of 4 years, I think I met 3,000 or so people, maybe a little more. And a lot of them were coming into me eventually. Again, this is where word of mouth kind of spread. A lot of them coming in with pain. So a lot of back pain. Then you'd have these are general population, everyone from 18-year-old and even sometimes younger. You're dealing with younger people as well, but up to, I think the oldest person I saw was 93, and everyone in between from all walks of life. And in that job, I learned all the soft skills that you could possibly learn nearly, because you do not know what's coming through the door. They just make the appointment. They come in through that door and they have an hour and 15 minutes with you, and you have to try and find out, right, what's going on here? Is this actually an injury, or is this a chronic pain? Is this chronic pain stemming from something that's gone on in their life? You know, and some days them people will tell you everything, and other days you'll never get it out of them. And the guys you'll never get it out of, unfortunately, they're still probably wondering why they're still in pain. But the ability to speak and to try and draw it out of them without being too kind of merely aggressive in your approach with them and asking them why are you in pain or whatever. But if you're able to speak in a nice manner and have empathy for that person, like the amount of people that sat in front of me and they probably just cried for about half an hour, and that was brilliant, and that was their like therapy for all the world. And I quickly became quite good at that, and I have no problem saying that. And as I said, the business became quite successful for me. No, I didn't own it or anything like that. I was just working for him, but I had a little clinic there that was going nicely. I had people coming from all over the west coast of Ireland. I had inter-county hurlers, footballers coming. I had international athletes, international rowers, runners, swimmers. So you saw all the athletes, but you saw the general population as well. And I think soft skills there are really, really important. I got a lot of experience there that translated then obviously into the inter-county scene and the club scene and everyone I deal with now, even management, because you have to be able to deal with, you know, you're dealing with a backroom team of maybe 15, 20 people, and they're all coming from different walks of life. So yeah, I definitely got a lot of experience there.
No, it's really interesting. I think there's a huge crossover in the skill set of, I suppose, professional life and sporting life. I think I think the two kind of go hand in hand, really, you know. So next question, Shane, tell me what the day of a training session looks like for you. I suppose we'll go with Clare maybe. So a Clare training session, Joe, what's your day look like? What kind of prep are you doing for it? What kind of communication is there between the coaches before the session, that kind of thing?
Yeah, well, let's break that down into maybe the week of a game. Or like the Munster round robin, where you're after playing a game on the Sunday and then your game maybe next Sunday or whatever. So, you know, if it's a Tuesday, you probably would have had a management kind of a management and selector meeting on the Monday night to debrief on the game, and then we'll go through, right, this is what we want to show the guys back on Tuesday night, and this is what we want to work on this week, and then you look forward to who you're playing the week after, and this is how we're going to approach them. So some of those meetings could go on for, you know, an hour and a half, 2 hours. So come, let's say the training's on the Tuesday then. So part of my role is at the minute now is to do kind of a video analysis session. Whereas like we have people doing the stats in the video and coding and all that. So they look after that. But then as a coach, I might want to pick out, you know, 5 or 6 things. Right, guys, we've been working on this for the last game. This is what went well, and this is what didn't go so well, and maybe this is why it didn't go so well. So you'll show them that, and then probably not on the Tuesday, but maybe on the Thursday night. Then it kind of depends on how much time you have before the next game. You'll say, right, this is what we need to work on versus the next team. This is how we need to approach the next team, and you'll show a couple of clips from that. And again, I'll be pulling out those clips, maybe using a bit of clip draw or something like that, just to highlight it. Something simple enough, but keeping that to probably 20-30 minutes max before training. I'd arrive to training probably 2 hours before the training starts. So you're talking if trains at 7, they're 5. Just setting up the kind of the computer or the video room, let's say, so your screen and your laptop and whatnot, and getting the chairs laid out and that. And then you might or might not, again, depending on how the week is going, you might again meet with the management there again just to debrief. But earlier that day, I would have rang, you'd be ringing all the other coaches. So the coaches, hurling coach, let's say, the other hurling coach, myself, the S&C, maybe the sports scientist and the S&C kind of doing the same thing to see, right, is there anyone that's kind of a red flag now after the weekend? Who do we need to pull back a little bit here? Maybe who didn't play at the weekend that needs a little bit more? And then you're creating your session plan then based on that. So if that doesn't happen on the Monday, that'll happen on the Tuesday morning. Create the session plan. The session plan will go to the players by Tuesday lunchtime, usually 1 or 2 o'clock. So the players know exactly what's coming up. And then, as I said, you're just getting down to training. A lot of it you're going through in your head. And then once you're down there 2 hours beforehand, you have time to kind of relax. But in case you forgot something, you have time to do whatever you might have forgotten. So get through your training session then, and you're straight away just moving on to the next day. So that's kind of how during the season, let's say a training session or a training day would go, I wouldn't even call it a day. It is nearly the day before, and the day before, once one thing is over, you're straight away focusing on the next day. So a lot of phone calls, WhatsApps, that kind of a thing, just to make sure everyone's on the same page.
You can be quite chaotic, can't it? Like that Munster round robin is just, it's hold on for dear life, really, isn't it? We could have experienced it last year at the Camogie as well. At Dublin, we played 5 weekends in a row in the championship, and it's just, you're literally just praying that nothing goes majorly wrong because you've so little time. It's just, we're ready here now for the first round, and then it's all over so quickly. Then you've 5 rounds played. It can be fairly chaotic.
I think, and obviously I'm not a manager and never have managed, but as the manager of the team, trusting the guys you've brought into your backroom team with their expertise there is so important. So I mean, if the S&C is saying this guy cannot do anything tonight, or this guy can do X amount, you have to trust them, because the margin for error there is so small. Like you'd see at intercounty level this year, like if a guy got injured, he's missing the whole Munster Championship, or could have missed the year. There was plenty of high profile injuries this year, and you just don't want that. And thankfully we didn't have too many ourselves this year, so I think we managed that quite well this year. But it's so important just to have open levels of communication throughout that whole backroom team. Make sure everyone's on the same page, and if there's not, then you're in trouble.
Mm-hmm. What are your 3 non-negotiables for any team you're involved in?
Number 1, definitely punctuality. I am a stickler for time. I've a small bit OCD with it. I kind of don't like that part of my attribute, let's say. I do and I don't, but like that, as I said, like I'd have to be down to training 2 hours beforehand, or even if I was at home training myself, I'd nearly have to be there an hour beforehand. It's just, I suppose it is a good thing in a way. I am kind of religious with time, and I'd be quite put out if players weren't on time. And if I go into a new club I'm with now will know exactly, I have a few punishments, let's say, if the first training session or the first couple of training sessions, if there's fellas late, they won't be long being on time in the future, and it works, so but yeah, punctuation is definitely one. Mm-hmm. Fellas being on time, and look, we know there's always those guys, and we're kind of like, once they arrive we can start the session, and it kind of becomes a bit of a joke then as well, because you have to appreciate everyone else. Some guys are coming from afar, and some guys are just like that, and you have to respect the guys like that as well.
It depends on the environment as well. Like I'd have been very much like that as well. And when we finished with Westmeath in 2019, a club in Westmeath, Clonkill, asked me to get involved. No, I'd heard of Clonkill obviously because they had 5 or 6 lads on the panel, but I had no idea what I was going into. And like I just remember the first night we were doing a training session, I see a lad wandering in, bag over the shoulder, about 10 minutes late, and up head to toe in muck, overalls, and just sat at the side of the pitch eating a sandwich. And like, he hadn't been at home all day. He was on the farm until about 3 minutes ago. So like there wasn't much point me giving out to that lad, for being late. He's literally hauled himself out of a silage pit somewhere to come training, so I suppose
exactly,
you kind of have to make allowances for your environment as well sometimes. But
if you can
big one for me as well, though.
If you can create the environment that, right, I do want you to be there. I always say if you're 5 minutes early, you're 10 minutes late. So if train's at 7, I want you there a quarter to at least. And in that way, then if a fella is running 10 minutes late, he'll still be on time. So but you have to respect the guys that are working hard jobs, physical jobs, lads or ladies with kids at home, so you'll have all sorts of backgrounds, and you do have to respect that as well. But at least if you can have your own, if you set out your own stall at the start and you're always on time, well, then the players will respect that you're holding up your own side of it. So definitely that's number 1. I suppose another one might be effort, if you want to call it effort. So coming down to training and actually giving it everything and being as coachable as you can be. I first one again, I'll put my hand up and say there was many years there where I was just going training for the sake of going training. There was a number of years where I kind of fell out with the love of the game nearly, and it became a slog for me driving home, because I'm living in Limerick. It's about a 45-minute drive, and there was a stage where you're just going home and you're going through the motions, and you're probably not putting in the effort, number 1, and then number 2, you're not even coachable to the coach that was there, and all you can do look back and just maybe regret it a little bit. But definitely it's something I look for now, is that can you come in tonight and just be 1% better? Can you improve by 1% here tonight? But again, I'll try tailor the training session so as that will happen. So if I can spot, because you'll spot these guys a mile away a lot of the time, and then maybe if you're doing a game or playing a game, maybe ask that person specifically, what are we trying to achieve here, or what were we working on there, or think about the next team we're playing. How does this game apply to them, and get him involved or her involved in the thought process, and that'll make them feel a little bit better going home maybe. So yeah, giving a good effort at training is important, even though I know, and I said I've been there, it's not possible. Some days you can be like a dog, things can be happening outside of sport, obviously, but as a coach then it's up to you to maybe spot that and bring them along with you, get those guys to come along with you.
My big thing always is, look, whether you put in the effort or not, you're there for an hour and a half. So if you're going to be there for an hour and a half, you may as well put in the effort. Like, you've made the time to come here for that time. Why waste it? And like, if you look at in America, like I don't think a lot of GA teams realize how lucky they are. Like, if you're playing the NFL, they'll divide you up into first team, second team, third team, and the first team get loads of reps, second team gets some reps, and the third team might get no reps of a day. So like, you might be just standing around waiting for someone to get injured in training. So I think you should always be kind of grateful that you're getting the opportunity to improve. And yeah, it can be difficult. Do you use stats within training to raise intensity? Do you track things within training? Do you try and create those parameters to, not that you want to, I suppose, create an environment of effort, like you'd be hoping that's intrinsic, but do you put certain things in place to try and foster it, I suppose?
I wouldn't track, but let's say if we were playing a game-based situation, like one for example might be a puck out drill, let's say, where you have your field divided up into 3, and if the goalie can get away a short puck out, he gets 1 point. If he gets away a mid-range one, he gets 2, and a long one, he might get 5. That's one I kind of use because that keeps the goalies sharp, obviously. And or another one, just for example, it's still fresh in my head. We played kind of 4-a-side hurling, let's say, or 5-a-side hurling, so the 2 goalies will always stay in the goals, but then you'll have 4 guys rotating in, so it's a 4v4, and then there's a 4 waiting out, and we play first to 5 or whatever, and sure, a couple of grips for the winners or whatever, and that kind of brings, so bringing competition into your training can drive the effort, and that's probably how I would try to do it. Was just bringing that little bit of competition. And
my first year in Dublin, Donny Fox had a thing. He used to give a packet of rashers to the player in the middle third who got the most tackles in. Not sure how PC it is, but they're the biggest pig on the field, so they got a packet of rashers.
But again, it's
little things like that. Yeah, they kind of become part of your culture then, don't they? That it
does. Yeah. And players enjoy that. Players do enjoy it. The last one then, I suppose, the last non-negotiable, I suppose if you want to call it a belief or a trust. So belief and trust in the process. So trust me that I'm going to make you a better hurler. Okay, and obviously you need to turn up and give me your efforts to do that. Trust obviously the process that we're working on. So if we're trying to play a certain way or a certain style of hurling or a couple of different structures, trust that these are going to be good enough to beat the teams we're going to come up against. And if a player believes in the system, if they believe in the process and they believe in the coaching that they're getting, there's a much greater chance of them being successful than someone who isn't believing in it. And again, I've had myself as an example. There's some times when I didn't believe in it and your head just isn't in the right place. You come to match day and things just are dreadful. But thankfully, those kind of, once you get a little bit older, it's funny, like I actually really enjoying hurling, just going back playing now, because now I'm seeing the other side of it where I'm not getting frustrated and I'm trying to see, right, this is what we're trying to do here and buy into it and whatever. But I definitely do see it in younger guys, early 20s kind of guys, where they are just turning up for the sake of turning up. They're not really, not that they're not believing in it, but maybe they're not reading enough into it. Maybe they're not taking it as serious as you'd like them to take it. So that'll be the last thing I'd say, is just to, trust and believe in whatever systems are put in place or whatever style of coaching is put in place, and you will be a much harder team to beat if you do that.
It's probably never been harder to get that belief in a group as well, is it? Because I suppose if you go back 20 years ago, even when I was starting out, if you told someone to jump over the wall 15 times that we're going to win the Ireland, they'd probably do it. Whereas I suppose our population as a country has never been more educated. I think there's never been more information available to guys, and there's never been more analysis and discussion about hurling. So I think if you're not on point and if you're game plans and your game principles and all that are not where they should be, you lose the belief of the players straight away. I think the idea of blind faith in a dressing room is gone now. I think it's like you have to be on point as a coach to bring them on the journey with you.
Yeah, that's usually important as a coach. You have to get those points across. That's how you communicate with players. If you're not able to communicate how you're going about this, they won't buy into you. So communication as a coach, really, really important.
Yeah, and look, and getting the players to buy in as well, or like getting the players to give their input. You know, I think the greatest resource we have is the players. You're only as good as your players, like, you know, and like they're the ones playing the game. I think the more you get the players to input into game plans and direction of the team and stuff like that, the more likely they are to come on that journey with you, because they're invested in it and they've bought into it. I suppose it's all part of the process as well. This is a tricky one, I think. When you step away from a team, what 3 things would you like the players to say about you? You can play cool and say you don't care if you want, like, but
no, like you do. You want. Well, you do. You want them to say that they enjoyed the training sessions, you know. So you want them to say that, right, this guy is a good coach. He really, really enjoyed going to training this year, or down to games with him this year. So that's definitely one. I suppose you want to be able to say, yeah, well, he improved me as a player, you know. So I want to be able to walk away or go away from a team having said, I'm leaving these guys in a better place than when I came in. We mightn't have won anything, but they're in a much better place than when I came in. So those are definitely 2. After that, then you wanted them to maybe say that, you know, he's a nice fella, he's sound, he's approachable, you know, maybe something like that. You don't want to be a coach that isn't approachable, or that coach you can't talk to, because if you have, there might only be one player on the team, but if that one player is looking for a shoulder to cry on for all the world, let's say, or wants someone to talk to, or, you know, isn't comfortable asking you, right, let's say this guy isn't getting on the team, he might be getting 5 minutes here or there. Well, if he doesn't feel comfortable actually coming up to you or coming up to the management asking, well, why aren't I getting my minutes? Well, then you're probably not doing your job right there. So you have to be approachable and be able to see it from the player side. And thankfully, I suppose, me being young enough, I am still looking at it from the player side as well. So I try and get that across. So there are kind of 3 things that you'd be hoping they'll say. They might be calling the other things behind your back, but
yeah, as we saw yesterday, the Women's World Cup final, you don't necessarily have to be liked to get success, do you?
No, you don't.
Okay, last one in this section, Shane. And I suppose the reason I have this question in here, I got asked this about 5 years ago by a guy and I couldn't answer it, and it just blew my mind. So it's something I've thought an awful lot about since. What's your coaching ethos?
Again, when you would have sent out the draft to me here of maybe the questions, I had to think about it, but it didn't take very long for me to think about, because this is something that, even though I wasn't purposely thinking about it, but I still have had it in my head for so long. Are you familiar with the poem "If" by Rudyard Kipling?
Yeah.
So the first line of "If" goes something along the lines of, if you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you. Okay. So what I want, as a coach, I want my players to be able to keep their heads in an absolute crazy environment, be it in Semple Stadium, Croke Park, or in the small field out the back of the school, let's say. If they can keep their heads in the chaotic nature that is, let's say, hurling is the sport we're talking about here, while everyone else is shouting and screaming and blaming them, I want my players to be able to make those good decisions. So as a coach, if I can walk away from somewhere and say, yeah, those guys were able to make good decisions in the chaos, that's my job done, or I suppose that's my ethos, let's say. That's what I want. So yeah, inspired by Rudyard Kipling, but translated by, I think, Sean Boylan translated on a Vodafone ad back about 20 years ago or something. But
you're definitely a disciple of Paddy Butler when you're quoting Rudyard Kipling as your as your coaching ethos. That's for sure.
No, it's funny because that, even since that ad, that's where I first came across it on CV, and how many years ago it was, but just stuck with me, and it's something I've always read that poem at least a couple of times a year, just to see could I take another thing out of it. And definitely the first line when it comes to hurling and the chaos and that kind of thing, and keeping your head, it's really apt in hurling anyway.
Yeah, it can be easier said than done sometimes when you're in a cauldron with 20,000 Limerick lads screaming over the fence at you. But okay, right, Shane, I'm going to give you the opportunity to turn the tables here. I've done an awful lot of questioning here now, so it's easy to ask the questions and put you on the spot. So
instead of giving you the opportunity to ask any 3 coaching questions you wanted to me. So I'm going to give you the chance to fire away here.
Yeah, so I suppose this first one would be, what resources would you use as a coach to try, I suppose, improve yourself or to upskill, let's say?
Yeah, so obviously we're not going to try and pretend that these questions are off the cuff. We've done a little bit of preparation for this, right? So obviously reading, I've always been an avid reader since I was very small, so I still like it as a source of information. So a couple of books that like would really have influenced my coaching: Legacy, James Kerr. So it's nearly a cliche or a cheesy one to say now, because I'd say there's probably nobody listening here that hasn't read it. But I remember when I started off in management, it was nearly like a step-by-step guide of how you'd like to set up a high-performance environment, you know. And I've kind of always referred back to it. I nearly read it once a year. I don't think I actually have a copy of it now at the moment, because usually I get it, read it, and then someone will tell me they haven't read it, and I give it to them, and sure, it disappears. It's only a small little book as well, so it's gone, so I must get it again. I picked out a few off the shelf here. This John Wooden one I really like. There's loads of John Wooden books out there, but that's a kind of one that you can dip in and out of. Like, there's different nuggets in it and stuff like that. Like Colin Codd in Dublin used to always be given out to me. He said that my sessions were 90% intensity and 10% technique. But like Wooden was a big man for that. He was like always trained at such a level that when you go in and play the matches seem slow, like that you're actually at a higher level in training than what you are in games. So I kind of took that. That was a big takeaway from Wooden for me. So that's a nice one to dip in and out of. Jim McGuinness as well. This one might surprise people, but there's a lot. I kind of read that nearly every off season. I found it very inspiring. I suppose it just resonated with me. He kind of struggled early in his career and kind of went for jobs and didn't get them. And then when he took over Donegal, like, he'd such a challenge to kind of raise their expectations for themselves and expect more of themselves. And it's just such an inspiring story. And I suppose he's kind of obsessive and a bit mad as well, and I probably am as well. Like, so, that's why it resonates. And then when I was going through the books, I found this that I'd forgotten I had, but this is probably funny. So The Tough Stuff, Cody Royle. It's 7 hard truths about being a head coach, and the very, very first one, I think you'll probably laugh at. Everybody thinks you're an idiot. So it's just what you said there, Rudyard Kipling. Keep your head, and when everybody's blaming you, it's okay. Every head coach, there's people out there who thinks they're idiots. So that's their books, podcast as well.
I'll just throw in a book there just before you go on the podcast. Just a book I actually had read, and I'll probably read it again. There is Pep Lijnders' book, Intensity. He's the Liverpool head coach. Really good read as well. Yeah, I'm just about to say there is I'm into the training ground guru at the moment. Going back. Oh yeah, he was on it last week. Yeah, the last one is Pep Lijnders' Intensity, which is class. There's actually a guy from Foynes on it a few weeks ago that I played football with, Connor Nestor. That's now managing, I heard it as well. Yeah, an Indian Premier League team. Like, I thought it was a mad thing to go from being in Foynes to managing the Dublin Camogie team, but he's taking the biscuit altogether where he's ended up. But look, books and podcasts, like, I suppose, like, we kind of have a little peer group of coaches, 4 or 5 of us there in a WhatsApp group that we bounce ideas off of and stuff like that. And I think I would have been frustrated a few years ago. I found GA coaches were very closed with sharing information and stuff like that. So that's probably why I would have gone out of my way to set that up. And I find that very useful, you know, like, there's a nice circle of trust there. No, everybody knows nothing leaves the group, and you can be really open and bounce ideas off guys and just learn from their experiences as well. And you love seeing an old 5-minute voice note going in from a fella on a Monday morning. Something has happened in a championship match on a Sunday, and you're like, right, we can get our teeth into this here now, and I'll learn a bit from this. And look, there'll be other guys outside of that group, like Donald O'Rourke there down in Cork, and Paddy Murray, and these guys have always been very good to me when I pick up the phone and ask them questions, and always be good for advice and stuff like that. So definitely a bit of peer learning as well. But even on that, Adrian, I'll just, like, obviously I'm part of that group there. There's 4 of us in it, and I would have been originally kind of maybe a little bit reluctant in sharing stuff, but like, it's amazing after a couple of weeks, couple of months there, and you're bouncing ideas off each other. It's a really productive way of learning. And I'd advise, you know, if you are out there and you're listening to this, and right, I know 2 or 3 other coaches, you know, give them a ring, say, look, would you be interested in this? You might come across some ideas, whatnot. Like, it is such an easy way of getting better as a coach. Or if you have certain scenarios you're not sure of where to turn to ask, let's say, you have 3 or 4 guys there who are working and probably have faced the same situations as well. So definitely worth doing if you're listening to this, and you have 3 or 4 other coaches in mind maybe that you can trust and want to bounce ideas off.
Definitely, and reach out to people as well. Like, you'd be surprised. I know hurling is a bit closed, but I remember there a few years ago I heard Andy Friend talking on News Talk, and I was just like, Jesus, he was class. And I just found him on LinkedIn and sent him a message, and I was like, Andy, I heard you on the radio there. Any chance to meet up with you for a chat? And he just invited me up to Connacht training, and I was like, right, I'm coming up to have a look here now, and he'd probably have a 5-minute chat. Literally gave me the run of the place. Just ask whoever you want, talk to S&C coaches, analysts, big chat me after. I was like, geez, like, why are we so closed in the GA? Like, are we afraid some lad is going to steal a drill or steal an idea? It's like,
when every drill and game is out there available and interesting.
You know? So it's just, I think, like we shouldn't be afraid of each other as coaches. It's like we are each other's most obvious resource as from a learning point of view. And then the last thing then, Shane, like other sports, I suppose, became a bit of an AFL fanatic there over the last year. I'd always had a bit of a fleeting interest in it, but we had Cora obviously involved with us in Galway, and she started giving me the little kind of nuances of the game and stuff like that. And once you start learning these things, you become a lot more interested in it. So I have the foundation level AFL course done, and I'm looking to do the level 2 one next month online. So obviously there, fellow Titman there, shout out Conor Reardon's jersey up on the wall, the Swans,
and former teammate as well, proud to say. He was a few years behind me in school, but he was hurling Harty.
He switched to the AFL channel.
Well, he was hurling Harty Cup when he was 15, and we knew back then that he was going to be a star. Like, so, fairness to the great career.
So, man, but yeah, look, like other coaches, like other sports, like do a coaching course. I kind of have in my head that I might have a crack off the UEFA badges in the next couple of years, just to see could I do it. Like, you know, I think you can learn so much from other sports and patterns of play and different coaches and stuff like that. So yeah, that's kind of it. A bit of reading, chatting to other coaches, and just kind of keeping an eye on other sports. They'd be kind of the main 3, really.
Yeah, good stuff. It's question number 2. A graduate of sports science yourself. If you were to rewind back to day 1, would you do anything differently? And if so, what would you do differently?
I came to the conclusion I probably wouldn't do it at all. Is an interesting one, but I don't mean that in a disparaging way. I think, like, I was only 16 when I filled out my CEO form, and I probably put sport down because it was just something to do. Like, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. My brother and sister were both being teachers. I didn't really want to go down that route. And I think it didn't really suit me. I was never going to work as an S&C or like go on to physio or anything like that. That didn't really interest me. So what I kind of thought about with this was, like, I would have loved at the time if there was a way of kind of going down a different stream like you can do in the States, you know, that instead of having to do the S&C stuff, maybe would there be more coaching modules and more pedagogy modules and stuff like that. Because we had a few with Keane O'Neill and stuff, and he was unbelievable.
Yes, so basically having a major and a minor, let's say.
Yeah, having a major. I'd love to have gone and majored in coaching and maybe done a minor in something else. Or so, like, it's funny, like I said, I probably wouldn't go and do it, but like you mentioned there, the performance masters in UL, like, I think that's probably a lot more aligned with what I would have needed at the time. But at the time, the academia hadn't really come that far with regards to coaching in Ireland, really. So, like, it's a fantastic course and a fantastic grounding if you want to go into strength and conditioning or move on to physiotherapy if you hadn't got the points and stuff like that. But it didn't really suit what I kind of wanted out of it. But so yeah, that was an interesting one. So probably wouldn't go back, but not because it's anything to do with the course, just because it didn't really suit the path I ended up going to coaching, I suppose. Yeah.
And I'll just tell you a good one while we're talking about it. I went to a private career guidance counsellor, say, when I was in 6th year, you know, just to get a different perspective on what I should be thinking about for the CAO or go on doing and whatnot. But he, under no certain circumstances, was he let me leave his house, and he was saying, whatever you do, he says, you are not doing, or you're not going to put down sports science on your CAO. So anyway, lo and behold, I ended up putting it down, I think 3rd maybe, but I got it anyway. But and look, here we are. So I think, again, it goes back to what I said earlier, what's for you won't pass you.
Exactly.
And as the father says to me, he says, at the end of the day, there's always cows at home to be milked. So things don't work out.
That's it. Yeah,
always go home. So that's it. The last one then, I suppose, and we were speaking about this on our WhatsApp, and it would have affected me quite badly maybe over the last 2 weeks, and the same last year, and it's no different than the other coaches. But when you get better, let's say, or you get to your final destination, as we were calling it, so let's say you're knocked out in your semi-final, your final, your bet, or even if you win, I suppose what I would have always referred to was burnout. Those initial couple of weeks after you finish up with your team, let's say, but you gave it a nice term. You coined it as the slump. So we all know it. We know it as basically being like literally stuck to the bed for the next couple of weeks. Kind of, yes, you'll get out of it, but you've no drive. You've no real, you don't really want to do anything productive. Things are going on the long finger. So how do you maybe approach the slump now? You've a good few years of management and coaching behind you. I'm still only new to the game, but how are you dealing with it, or have you dealt with it? Or
look, you've explained it very well there. I suppose I used to think that it used to come after you've been beaten, right? And then was lucky enough to win a few things, and it still comes, right? And I suppose what you have to remember is how has it come about. So you've spent kind of maybe 7 or 8 months as part of this group, right? And 3 and 4 times a week, you're meeting up with 40 people, and you have this goal and you have this focus, and your whole week is geared around it, right? No matter, even my boss, Michael Taylor's watching this, he knows this, right? Everything we do all week when you're involved at that level is geared around performance and the group and everything, right? And you have this focus, and it drives you, and you've good days and bad days. And then all of a shot, it's gone, right? And if you get beaten in a semi-final or a quarter-final, it can happen very suddenly, and all of a sudden you wake up in the morning and you're like, Jesus, I hadn't planned for that. You get beaten in a final, obviously, you've kind of maybe thought about it. But I think fundamentally as human beings, we want to be part of a group, and we have it in our DNA that we want to try and achieve something as a group, right? And we're kind of tribalistic. The next thing, that's gone, right? And your focus is gone. So I suppose for me, this year was probably the first year where I didn't really experience the bad slump that I would have in other years. And I think it's because a combination of a few things. I suppose I played an awful lot of golf, right? So I had that focus that I was meeting up with a few lads 2 and 3 times a week in the evening, and it provided no structure to the week that my evenings weren't idle. So I wasn't letting myself be idle. I was very, very busy at work as well. So I probably didn't have enough time to think about not having that structure there and having nothing to do in the evenings, I suppose. And then I've gotten really into like doing kind of yoga and meditation on this app called Pliability. And I found that kind of, I suppose it gets you mentally in a better place maybe as well. So yeah, like I suppose trying to just have a routine there for as soon as you're finished, whether it's like getting back into the gym or having another hobby or something like that, kind of helps. No, it didn't completely go away. There's still days here like, Jesus, like I couldn't watch the Camogie final this year when he was on at home. The nephews had it on. You're just like, oh, I just couldn't be bothered watching this. And you're kind of looking at it, and it's like, so it's still there, like illogical, like kind of just not wanting to watch it and stuff. So you have all those things, but I think it's impossible to avoid it, like, because you put so much time and energy into this and then it's gone. But I think if you have other activities and hobbies and people around you that you can do things with and kind of just stay busy, it kind of minimizes the effect of it, I would say. Yeah. But like, it's tough. Like it's something I could throw back at you. Like we're kind of talking here about like mental health and stuff with coaches, but like during the season, like what do you do to stay healthy yourself? Because you spend all your time thinking about 40 other people, right? And how you're going to keep them on a pitch and keep them conditioned and keep them healthy. But like, do you take any steps during the season yourself to make sure that you're in as good a condition as you possibly can to coach the Clare hurling team?
Yeah, well, I suppose from my own side of it, I've been actually a morning person. So because most of my evenings are gone, I get up and I normally go to the gym around 6:30. And at least maybe 3 times a week. Maybe there was a stage this year, it was possibly 4 times. Either go to the gym or go for a run or go for a walk. So I'd get up and do something like that. And that just became routine and always has been routine. I've always been kind of like that. The rounds of golf and that, I'm not as big a golf player. I actually, after last year, say the season before this year, I went and I bought a set of golf clubs to try and find a different focus, to try and get my head away from thinking about hurling or whatever. So I had them there this year now, but again, I was slow enough to pick them up. But when I did, I actually found it was a great.
Don't get me wrong, though, Shane. I'm useless.
I know, but
you're out in the field for 3 or 4 hours with a couple of lads.
It was absolutely brilliant. It was a brilliant help. It really was. So again, and that's not going to be everyone's cup of tea either. But again, as you said, having a focus on something. If there's something that right, when this day does come, be it at this round or that round or in the final, I need to have some sort of a focus. There's something to do in the evenings. There's something to pass the time. That's important. But for me during the year, it was mostly going to the gym and that in the morning time, or going for a run or a walk. But I actually found coaching another team, so coaching the club team on the other nights of the week actually really helped as well, because it's the same thing, but it was a totally different focus.
Yeah.
So I actually found that very helpful this year. And people might think that's crazy. Oh, Jesus, you're gone every night of the week now coaching. But no, it was a huge help. And then obviously straight away, once the intercounty finished, you have your club team there they're going to be kicking off in a week or two's time.
Yeah. So, no, that's it. Yeah, it's just important to have the focus. I think the health is such an important thing. The unhealthiest I ever was when the year we spent coaching Westmeath, because we were all living in Limerick, and it was 2 hour drive to Mullingar, 2 hour drive home. And then you're eating dinner late, then you have another 2 hour drive home, and you're stopping in filling stations, you're having coffees, you're having sugar to stay awake and stuff like that. You're eating like an intercounty athlete, but you're not training like an intercounty athlete.
Correct. Yeah.
And it's just like, I've made one promise to myself this year, and I know this might sound bananas to people, is that I'm just not going to bother with the dinners after training next year.
I stopped that this year. Stopped it this year. Most of the time anyway, after trainings I divide it. And
there's probably some lads now listening to this going, look at these lads saying they don't want the dinner after training.
No, but I still, in fairness, I hand on heart, I still put up weight this year, still, because you do, because you're snacking and you're anxious about things, and you don't realize that you're probably eating more than you should be as well. And then obviously, because of this year, I took on a bit more coaching this year. I wasn't able to go home and train as much myself, so I actually was missing out on physical hurling training a lot more than I was the year before. So you wouldn't be long put on a few pounds, as they say. But so definitely keeping active if you can. It's really important. Yeah,
100%. We're nearly there, Shane. Very final question. 20 years time, maybe 30 years time for you. You're a bit younger than me. You hang up the whistle for the last time. What's the one achievement you want to have in the bag? What's that one medal you want to have in the pocket?
Actually, do you know what? And this might sound cheesy and whatnot, but medals didn't even come into my mind. It was just that I want to have a family and a home to go to, and a good circle of friends that I can trust. That's an achievement on its own, because the time that goes into this. What I actually had originally written down here, and I will say it, I wasn't going to say it, but I will say it. I says, ideally married, and that she's still with me. So, because
there's no guarantee the amount of time you're away from home. But you know what?
But that's an achievement on its own.
Sometimes the amount of time you're away from home is nearly a blessing, Shane.
Well, it can be too, but because of the time, like they say, if you're getting involved in intercounty level, let's say, and even club level as well, but intercounty especially, the number one thing you have to have is time. And if you don't have time, someone else is going to be put out. And I'm lucky enough yet, as I said, I'm not married, I don't have kids or anything like that I don't have too many external worries outside of it. But most coaches and managers do. I don't know how to do it. So again, in 30 years' time, as I said, if I had a family and a home to go to, that would be an achievement enough for me. Obviously, look, we all want to win the big ones, and we all want to win whatever is going, But it's important not to forget what you're leaving behind when you're going out taking on these jobs as well. Absolutely. Shane, it's been an absolute pleasure. I'm sure our listeners have taken plenty of nuggets, little information for you. Did you enjoy sitting down and giving your thoughts on coaching? Yeah, no, I look really enjoyable, and I just hope people might have taken one or two things from it. So over the next couple of episodes, I'm sure you have a few more, and I'm sure I'll be watching or listening myself. So every day is a school day, as they say. So if you can learn one or two things from every coach that's out there, you won't be going too bad. Exactly. Great stuff, Shane. Listen, we'll leave it at that. Thanks very much for joining us, and thanks to everyone for listening. Thanks, Adrian.